They thought they were just robbing a quiet small-town bank, but sitting near the back counter was a man who'd seen too much war to run from danger. A retired Navy SEAL named Jack Mercer. Beside him, two loyal K9s, Rex and Luna, watched in silence, their eyes locked on the men with guns. And when those robbers made one fatal mistake, it wasn't Jack who moved first. It was his dogs. What happened next? The courage, the loyalty, the miracle inside that bank will stay with you long after this story ends. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. The autumn sun rose over Bozeman, Montana, bathing Redwood Community Bank in soft amber light. The morning carried the scent of coffee and pine. The only sounds inside were the hum of machines, the shuffle of paperwork, and the slow rhythm of a country song coming from the old radio on the shelf. Jack Mercer stood quietly near the center of the lobby, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 30s, whose posture still carried the weight of command. His gray eyes scanned the room with calm precision. His short, dark hair was flecked with early gray, his face sharp-edged but composed, the kind of man whose silence drew attention without asking for it. Years as a Navy SEAL had honed him into something between patience and steel. At his feet, two German shepherds lay side by side. Rex, the older at 6, was a mountain of muscle and discipline, his black and tan coat gleaming under the morning sun. His eyes were calm, calculating. Beside him, Luna, 4 years old, smaller and faster, had a lighter coat and a sharper focus. Her every breath a silent readiness. They were war partners once, now companions in peace. Jack held a weathered brown folder, his loan application. He wasn't there for money. He was there for purpose. A plan to build a rehabilitation center for retired K9s outside town. Behind the counter, Emma Collins smiled at him, a tired but genuine smile. Late 20s with chestnut hair pulled into a low ponytail, she wore her uniform with quiet grace. Her hazel eyes radiated empathy born of endurance. Life had not been kind, but she had chosen to remain kind anyway. Near the door, Frank Doyle, the security guard, stood at ease, a man in his 50s with square shoulders and a cop's posture. His gray hair peeked beneath a navy cap. His hand rested casually near the baton on his belt. He had the calm of someone who could see trouble coming before it entered the door. For a while, the world inside the bank felt steady. The air smelled of paper and disinfectant. Coins clinked. Emma laughed softly with a customer. Jack exhaled slowly, resting a hand on Rex's head. Then came the sound, screeching tires, cutting across the quiet like tearing metal. Rex's ears snapped forward. Luna rose slightly, muscles rippling under her coat. Jack's instincts returned with brutal clarity. His hand stilled the dogs. The glass doors burst open. Cold air swept through, and 4 armed men stormed in. Blake led the group. Tall and lean, he wore a black leather jacket that creaked when he moved. The kind of man who'd been on the wrong side of luck too many times to still believe in it. A black bandana covered his lower face, and a sawed-off shotgun rested tight in his grip. His movements were sharp and deliberate, his tone low but commanding. "Nobody move," he said, scanning the room with the eyes of a man who thrived on control. Behind him came Rick, broader and heavier, his brown bomber jacket zipped up to the collar. His gloved hands gripped a 9mm pistol too tightly, his breathing fast, unsteady. His mask was a torn strip of fabric tied roughly at the back, and his voice boomed rough and impatient. Hands where I can see 'em. Move and you're done. He wasn't calm. He was itching to prove something. Eddie followed, thin as wire and jittery, wrapped in a dark green denim jacket that looked stolen from a thrift store. He held a metal pipe, tapping it nervously against his leg. The mask across his face muffled his words, but the tremor in his tone was clear. Phone's down. Don't call anyone. His eyes darted across the room, wild and unsure. And finally came Tommy, the youngest. His gray field coat hung loosely on his frame, the sleeves rolled up unevenly. He lingered near the door, clutching a large black duffel bag like it contained his soul. Through the scarf around his face came the uneven rhythm of his breath, fast, anxious, and far too human. His gloved fingers twitched around the handle, and his shoes scuffed the floor with hesitation. Something about him didn't fit the others. His body language spoke more of regret than resolve. Inside the bank, time splintered. Emma froze mid-motion, her fingers hovering over the register keys. Frank's eyes flicked toward the group, reading spacing, weapons, intent. A woman near the waiting area whimpered softly. Jack didn't move. He let the soldier inside him wake, slow and precise. His heart didn't pound. It settled. Rex's head lifted. Luna crouched, eyes locked. Jack's mind measured distance, cover, and opportunity. He'd been in this kind of silence before, seconds before something broke. But then, his gaze caught Tommy's bag, the way it sagged unevenly, the dull metallic clink that wasn't money, the rhythm that didn't belong in a robbery. Jack's eyes narrowed, instincts whispering what his mind refused to say. He'd heard that sound before, in alleys, in compounds, in the seconds before the world turned to fire. And as Blake shouted for Emma to open the cash drawer, that faint ticking grew louder in the stillness. It wasn't the sound of cash. It was the sound of time running out. Don't move! Money! Now! Blake's voice thundered through the bank, echoing off the marble walls like a gunshot. He slammed the butt of his shotgun against the counter, the sound sharp and final. The customers gasped. A woman near the window clutched her purse and began to cry softly. Rick vaulted over the counter, his heavy boots thudding on the linoleum as he grabbed Emma by the arm. Her frightened yelp filled the silence. He yanked her upright, pressing the muzzle of his pistol to her temple. Eddie, jittery and pale, swung his metal pipe hard against the glass of the safety cabinet, shattering it in a rain of shards. Tommy hurried to the front doors, fumbling with the locks, his breath ragged behind his gray scarf. Jack sat motionless in the corner booth, body relaxed, but mind razor-sharp. His hand rested lightly on Rex's neck while his eyes flicked from one robber to another, mapping the room in seconds. 8 meters to the door. 2 armed men. 5 civilians. No cover in the open space except the counter and a potted ficus. His breathing slowed until it was almost non-existent. Wait for the right moment, he whispered. Luna, beside his leg, lay flat against the floor, her body coiled like a spring, ears erect, tail tucked close. Blake paced in front of the counter, the leather of his jacket creaking with each step. His finger twitched near the trigger. He wasn't calm anymore. Power had turned into panic. "Fill the bag, all of it," he barked. His voice cracked slightly. The voice of a man who had led too many bad jobs that went worse. Rick snarled, shoving Emma forward. Her cheek pressed against the cold marble as he yelled, "Hurry up!" The scent of gun oil and fear filled the air. Emma's trembling hands moved across the drawers, pulling out stacks of cash. Her heartbeat was so loud she could hear it in her ears. At the door, Frank stood half hidden behind the entry pillar. His gray eyes met Jack's across the room, a silent exchange between two men who had seen enough of life to recognize the edge of it. Frank's left hand twitched toward the baton at his belt, but he stopped. Not yet. The room was heavy with tension, every breath sharp, every second drawn tight. Eddie's pipe struck the counter again. "We don't have all day," he shouted, his voice cracking. His hands shook violently. Jack watched him carefully. Nervous men pulled triggers faster than steady ones. Then came a noise that didn't belong, the faint metallic rhythm from Tommy's duffel bag. Jack's eyes flicked toward it, his mind making instant calculations. The kid's body language screamed conflict. He wasn't like the others. His hands trembled as he locked the doors. His voice, muffled behind the scarf, came soft and breaking. "Blake, we shouldn't—" "Shut up!" Blake snapped, turning the shotgun toward him. "Do what you're told!" The other hostages flinched. The tension climbed another notch. Jack's voice insisted. His head was calm, clinical. "There's a bomb. There's panic. There's fear. Fear means mistakes." "Hey!" Rick shouted at Emma. He grabbed her hair, forcing her to look up. "You're too slow." His tone turned feral, his pistol pressing harder against her skull. She whimpered, her body shaking. Jack's grip on Rex tightened slightly. The dog's eyes fixed on Rick, muscles tense, a low growl building deep in his chest. "Easy," Jack whispered. Rex froze. His control was absolute, but barely. "Frank," Jack mouthed silently. The guard understood. His eyes darted toward the side wall, where the emergency alarm sat hidden beneath a fire extinguisher. He gave a slight nod. Just as Rick began to shout again, a flicker of movement appeared near the far corner. A man in a navy jacket stepped halfway into the lobby. It was Alan Fisher, the bank manager, a short, balding man in his 50s with worried eyes and a soft belly pressing against his vest. He had been hiding in his office, dialing 911, unaware that the robbers controlled the floor. Blake spun at the movement. "Who the hell is that?" he roared. Alan froze, hands raised, voice shaking. Please, just take the money and go." Blake fired into the ceiling. The blast thundered through the room. Plaster dust rained down. "Nobody talks unless I say so," he yelled, eyes burning behind his mask. Alan stumbled backward, heart pounding. In that split second, everyone's focus turned toward Blake. The sound, the power, the violence. And that was the opening. Frank's hand darted toward the alarm, pressing it once, silent, but connected to the sheriff's office 3 blocks away. Then he straightened, moving like nothing had happened. Jack didn't move yet. His instincts told him to wait until the chaos tilted, until one of them made the first fatal mistake. Eddie was the first to unravel. Sweat dripped from his forehead beneath the fabric mask. He was muttering to himself now, pacing near the window. "We should have been gone already," he whispered, the metal pipe clinking softly against his leg. "We should have—" Blake turned on him. "Shut up and cover the door." "I am covering it," Eddie snapped, swinging the pipe toward the front. And then he saw Tommy's bag. "What's in that thing?" he asked, suspicion rising. Tommy froze. His knuckles whitened on the straps. "Don't," he said softly. Blake snapped. "It's the plan, you idiot. Just stick to it." Jack's breath stopped. The plan? His blood ran cold. The ticking was real. Emma's tear-streaked face turned slightly toward him, eyes wide with silent plea. Jack gave the smallest shake of his head. "Stay down." The sound from the duffel bag grew louder. Distinct now, steady, mechanical. A timer. "Blake," Tommy stammered. "It's not supposed to be armed yet." "What do you mean, not yet?" Blake demanded, taking a step toward him. Rick cursed, tightening his grip on Emma. "You maniacs brought a bomb?" That word tore through the room like a second gunshot. Jack's mind moved faster than sound. "Rex," he whispered, his voice low, precise. The dog tensed. Luna shifted beside him, waiting for her cue. Outside, sirens began faintly in the distance. The world was closing in. And as the first wail of police echoes reached the street, Tommy's shaking hands slipped, dropping the bag. The ticking grew louder, and everyone in the room froze. "Open the vault, you stupid girl!" Rick shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of fear and fury. His pistol pressed so hard against Emma's temple that her skin whitened beneath it. The sound of the ticking from Tommy's dropped duffel bag filled the room, faint but relentless. Time itself seemed to shrink, folding into the desperate rhythm of danger. Jack's gray eyes locked on Rick's trembling hand. Every second stretched into eternity, every breath a calculation. He inhaled once, deep and steady, his voice low, almost inaudible. "Rex, go." The word cut through the air like a trigger. Rex exploded forward, a blur of muscle and loyalty. The German shepherd's jaws clamped down on Rick's forearm before the Pronto could react. The pistol fired once, wild and harmless, shattering a ceiling light. Rick screamed, thrashing backward, the gun clattering to the floor. The dog's teeth dug deeper, holding firm despite Rick's desperate attempts to shake him loose. "Get him off me!" Rick howled, his eyes wide beneath the mask. With his free hand, he fumbled at his belt, pulling a short combat knife. The blade flashed once in the fluorescent light, before plunging into Rex's chest. The sound that followed wasn't a bark. It was a deep, guttural cry, the kind that twists the air itself. Rex stumbled, his back leg buckling, but he didn't release his grip. Blood darkened the fur around his ribs as he pulled, dragging Rick down. The man fell hard, the knife slipping from his hand. Jack's composure shattered into motion. He lunged from his position, closing the distance to Blake in seconds. The robber barely had time to lift his shotgun before Jack's shoulder crashed into him. The impact sent Blake sprawling, his weapon skidding across the floor. Jack's movements were pure instinct, controlled violence honed by years of training. He twisted Blake's arm behind his back and drove a knee into his ribs, the sound of air being forced from lungs filling the space between shouts. At the same moment, Luna reacted. The younger shepherd shot forward, her body low and fast. She struck Eddie in the legs, toppling him like a tree hit by wind. The metal pipe clanged away as she barked fiercely, teeth bared, holding him down with her paws. Eddie screamed, his voice breaking into a plea. "Don't let her kill me! Don't!" Jack didn't look. He was focused on Blake, who was trying to reach for a backup pistol tucked under his jacket. Jack's hand snapped out, striking his wrist and sending the gun spinning across the floor. He followed with a quick strike to the temple. Not enough to kill, but enough to end the fight. Blake went limp, his body collapsing beside the counter. Emma crawled away, trembling, her hands over her ears. Frank, realizing the balance had shifted, surged forward from the entrance. Years of police training came alive. He drew his baton, his movements quick and sure. "Frank," Jack called, Voice stops, sharp. Watch the door! Frank turned just in time to see Tommy, the youngest, backing toward the emergency exit. His gray coat flapped as he reached for the handle, the duffel bag lying forgotten near his feet. The boy's mask was half torn, revealing a pale, freckled face barely 20. His blue eyes were wide, not cruel but terrified. Kid, don't, Frank warned, his voice deep and steady. Don't make this worse. I didn't want this, Tommy shouted, his words breaking. It wasn't supposed to go like this. He turned, bolting through the exit and vanishing into the alley behind the bank. Frank hesitated. The instinct to chase burned in his muscles, but Jack's command pulled him back. Let him go, Jack barked. Secure the others. Eddie was still pinned beneath Luna, sobbing now, his face pressed against the tile. Blake lay unconscious, blood pooling beneath his split lip. Rick, gasping, tried to crawl backward, his wounded arm slick with blood. But Jack wasn't looking at them anymore. His focus was on Rex. The big shepherd was down, his chest rising unevenly. Blood soaked into his fur, pooling beneath him. Jack's heart clenched in his chest as he knelt beside his fallen companion. Rex, he whispered, his hand finding the dog's neck. The pulse was faint, but it was there, stubborn, defiant, alive. Rex's eyes found his master's face, pupils dilated, pain etched in every trembling breath. Yet his jaws were still clamped around Rick's sleeve, refusing to release even in agony. Jack gently pried him loose. Easy, buddy. You did good. The sound of distant sirens grew louder. The alarm Frank had triggered was paying off. The flashing red lights reflected faintly through the front windows. Eddie tried to lift his head. You're dead, man. He spat weakly, his voice trembling. You and your damn dogs! Frank's baton came down, a single sharp strike that silenced him. Not today, the guard muttered. Jack turned to Emma, who was crouched behind the counter, tears streaking her face but eyes alert. You okay? He asked. She nodded shakily. He almost shot me. You're safe now, Jack said, though his voice was tight with grief. Luna returned to his side, blood splattered on her muzzle but unharmed. She nudged Rex's body gently with her nose, whining softly. The sight cracked something inside Jack that no war ever had. Hang on, buddy, he whispered again, pressing his hand against the wound to slow the bleeding. You're not leaving me yet. Outside, the sirens reached their crescendo. The first police cruiser screeched to a stop in front of the bank, followed by another. The flashing lights painted the room in alternating blue and red. Jack didn't stand. He stayed kneeling beside Rex, one hand steady on the wound, the other stroking the dog's head. Around him lay the wreckage of violence. Shattered glass, dropped weapons, the smell of gunpowder and fear. The fight was over, but the real battle, the one to keep Rex alive, had just begun. Rick was still struggling under Rex's grip, the knife glinting weakly in his shaking hand. Blood trailed down his forearm as he tried to pry the dog's jaws open, screaming incoherently. His mask was half torn, revealing the sweat-soaked skin of a man who had finally realized he wasn't going to win. Frank Doyle, the old guard whose age had not dulled his instincts, charged forward. His boots hit the tile hard. He swung his baton down, connecting squarely with Rick's wrist. The knife and gun flew from his grasp, clattering across the floor. Before the robber could recover, Frank pivoted and struck him again, a clean horizontal blow to the temple. Rick dropped instantly, sprawling motionless beside the counter. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by Rex's labored breathing. The once fierce shepherd now trembled on the ground, his chest rising unevenly. Blood spread beneath him in a slow crimson bloom, dark against the white floor tiles. Luna whined softly and lowered herself beside him, touching her nose to his neck as if to keep him anchored to life. Jack dropped to his knees beside them, tearing open the first aid kit Emma had fetched. "Frank, call 911!" Jack barked, pressing a gauze pad hard against the wound in Rex's chest. The bleeding was bad, deep, arterial. His mind flashed back to desert nights, to soldiers bleeding out under the same moonlight, to the same helplessness gnawing at his gut. "Stay with me, buddy," he murmured, his voice trembling despite himself. "Don't you dare check out on me now." Emma stumbled from behind the counter, still shaking but pushing through her fear. She was pale, her hands slick with adrenaline. "Here, take this," she said, handing over a roll of bandages and Jack's discarded jacket. Jack tore the fabric, wrapping it tightly around Rex's chest, using his belt to bind it in place. He pressed down, counting the seconds between the dog's breaths. "Come on, Rex," he whispered again. "You've been through worse." Frank, still catching his breath, crouched beside them after speaking into his radio. "Paramedics are on their way," he said, his voice steady but low. "ETA 3 minutes." He looked down at the wounded dog and shook his head in quiet disbelief. "Hell of a soldier, that one." "Yeah," Jack said softly, his hand never leaving Rex's fur. "He's saved more lives than any of us." Behind them, Blake groaned. The robber's leather jacket was torn, blood smeared across his cheek. He blinked slowly, dazed but alive. Jack turned sharply, rising with a look that froze the man in place. "Don't move," Jack warned, his voice edged with fury that barely hid the grief underneath. Blake didn't. Luna growled low, a sound that vibrated deep in her chest. Her eyes stayed fixed on Blake, her body still tense, protective. Emma backed away, her arms wrapped around herself. For the first time since the chaos began, she started to cry, silent tears rolling down her dirt-streaked cheeks. Outside, the flashing red and blue lights bled through the windows. The front door swung open as police officers entered, weapons raised. At their lead was Sheriff Daniel Harper, a tall, weathered man in his mid-40s with a square jaw and streaks of gray in his short hair. His uniform bore the marks of long service, the fabric slightly faded, his badge polished to a dull shine. Harper was a man who had seen violence but still believed in decency. It was what made him both respected and exhausted. "Everyone down," he shouted at first, standard procedure. But the moment he saw Jack, his tone softened. "Jack Mercer?" His brows knit together. "What the hell happened here?" Jack didn't look up from Rex. 4 armed men. They tried to rob the place. 3 down. 1 fled through the back alley. Harper's sharp gaze swept the room. Blake sprawled unconscious. Rick bleeding but alive. Eddie whimpering under Luna's watch. "Christ," he muttered, lowering his gun. "Looks like you saved a lot of lives today." "Not all," Jack replied quietly. He pressed down harder on Rex's wound, his knuckles white. The sheriff nodded to one of the officers. "Secure these 3, and find the 4th, kid in a gray coat. Name's Tommy, if the others weren't lying." "Yes, sir," the deputy replied, rushing out the back. Moments later, 2 EMTs arrived, a man and a woman, both young but composed. The woman, Laura Kim, had calm eyes and dark hair pulled into a neat bun. Her partner, David Reyes, was tall and broad-shouldered, his sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms scarred from years on the job. Without words, they dropped beside Rex. Laura's gloved hands moved with practiced precision. "Pulse weak, shallow respiration," she muttered. "He's lost a lot of blood." "Can you save him?" Jack asked, his voice barely steady. David looked up briefly. "We'll do everything we can, sir." He placed an oxygen mask gently over Rex's muzzle, adjusting it carefully as Laura wrapped fresh gauze around the wound. Frank helped them lift Rex onto a stretcher improvised from a heavy blanket. Luna followed, pressing close, her eyes never leaving him. Jack placed a steadying hand on her back. "Stay with him, girl." Harper approached Jack, his expression a mix of admiration and concern. "You okay?" he asked. Jack finally stood, exhaustion and blood smearing his sleeves. "Ask me when he's breathing right again." Harper gave a short nod. "Fair enough." His eyes drifted toward the front door, where the sirens still wailed in the distance. "You've done enough for one lifetime, Mercer. But I need you to come in later, to give a statement. We'll get that kid, I promise." Jack nodded silently. He watched as the EMTs carried Rex outside, Luna trotting beside them into the flashing lights of the patrol cars. The morning sun had shifted high, overhead, but inside the bank, it still felt like night. The fight was over, but the ache it left behind would linger. The soft hum of machines filled the quiet halls of Bozeman Animal Hospital, a sterile rhythm of life and uncertainty. The scent of antiseptic and iron hung in the air, mixing with the faint musk of wet fur. In the intensive care unit, Dr. Samuel Harris, a man in his mid-50s with silver hair and a calm, worn face, peeled off his gloves and exhaled slowly. His hands were steady, the kind that had sutured hundreds of wounds. But his eyes told the story of someone who had never grown used to seeing suffering. Years ago, he had been a military veterinarian at a base in Kandahar, a place Jack Mercer knew too well. That experience had left its mark. Harris carried the quiet gravity of someone who had saved lives in chaos and buried those he couldn't. He stepped into the dim waiting area, where Jack sat slumped forward, his elbows on his knees, the bloodstains on his sleeves now dried to a dark brown. His eyes were distant, unfocused, the way soldiers looked when they'd lost too many friends. Luna lay on the cold tile just outside the ICU door, her head resting on her paws, gaze fixed unwaveringly on the faint reflection of her brother beyond the glass. Dr. Harris cleared his throat softly. "Mr. Mercer." Jack rose, his movement stiff. "Tell me." The doctor hesitated only a moment before speaking, his tone gentle but direct. Rex suffered a deep laceration to his pectoral muscle. He lost a lot of blood. There was a knife fragment lodged dangerously close to the lung. He paused, watching Jack's expression tighten. But it didn't penetrate the organ. We managed to remove it, stop the bleeding, and close the wound. He's stable now. Jack closed his eyes briefly, letting out a breath that trembled with relief. "He'll make it?" "With rest, yes," Harris said. "He's strong, stubborn too, from what I hear." A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "He'll need weeks of recovery, but he'll walk again. Might even run, if you let him." Jack nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. He stepped toward the small window where Rex lay wrapped in blankets, an oxygen tube near his muzzle. The shepherd's chest rose and fell shallowly, each breath fragile but alive. Jack pressed his forehead to the glass, his voice barely audible. "You did good, soldier. Rest easy now." Dr. Harris watched in silence, then patted Jack's shoulder before turning away. Years of war had taught him when words only cheapened the silence. The night dragged on. Nurses came and went, soft-footed, kind-eyed. One of them, Nurse Carolyn Webb, a petite woman in her 30s with auburn hair and freckles across her nose, brought coffee and blankets. She'd grown up in Bozeman, had known the Mercer name from town whispers. Her gentle smile held both admiration and sadness. "He'll be okay," she said quietly. "Dogs like him don't give up." Jack thanked her with a nod, his voice caught somewhere between gratitude and exhaustion. Luna hadn't moved for hours, her body coiled tight like a sentry at her post. When the nurse tried to coax her away with food, she refused, eyes still fixed on the ICU door. Outside, dawn came slow and cold, spilling through the blinds in pale gold streaks. The light touched Luna's fur, and for a moment she lifted her head, ears twitching at the faint sound of breathing inside. By mid-morning, the hospital doors opened to a sharp gust of wind and the sound of boots on linoleum. Sergeant Thomas Miller entered, a man in his 40s, tall, broad-chested, with a square jaw framed by a day's worth of stubble. His uniform bore the insignia of the Bozeman Police Department, his demeanor that of someone who'd spent a lifetime chasing both criminals and ghosts. Miller had served with Jack years ago, back when both still wore the Navy's colors. The two men exchanged a look heavy with unspoken history. "Mercer," Miller said, his voice low but steady. "We got the last one. Tommy. Found him holed up in a warehouse north of town. Scared kid. Didn't resist." Jack's gaze lifted slowly. "Did he talk?" "Yeah," Miller replied. "Said he didn't know about the bomb. Just wanted money for his sister's surgery." He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Doesn't make it right, but it makes him human." Jack nodded once, his face unreadable. "Everyone's got their reasons." Miller looked past him toward the ICU window. "That dog of yours saved lives today. Whole damn town's talking about it." Jack's lips curved into the faintest smile. He always does. That afternoon, after giving his statement at the station, Jack returned to the hospital. The corridors were quieter now, the chaos replaced by the steady rhythm of recovery. He entered the room softly. Rex lay there, eyes half open, the light of recognition flickering when he saw his handler. His tail moved once, weak but determined. "Hey, partner," Jack murmured, kneeling beside him. "You made it." He placed a hand on the dog's head, feeling the warmth, the fragile pulse of life. "You did your job, better than anyone ever could." Luna padded in behind him, her nails clicking lightly against the tile. She approached the bed, sniffed Rex's bandaged chest, then settled beside him with a quiet sigh. Jack watched them both, his throat tightening. "You're safe now," he whispered. "Both of you." Outside, the late autumn sun dipped low, setting the maples ablaze with shades of crimson and gold. Light poured through the window, bathing the room in warmth. Jack sat there in the glow, hand resting on Rex's paw, Luna pressed close to his leg. He didn't speak again. He didn't need to. The silence between them said everything. The promise that no matter what came next, they would face it together. Sometimes, miracles don't come with wings or thunder. Sometimes, they come on four legs, with fur, loyalty, and a heart that refuses to give up. That day at Redwood Bank wasn't just about courage. It was about faith, the kind that reminds us God's hand still works quietly through those who protect without words. Rex's survival wasn't luck. It was grace. And maybe, just maybe, every act of love, every small bit of loyalty, is a reflection of that same divine mercy. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who believes that goodness still lives in this world. Leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from, and share your own story of faith or courage. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel for more true stories of hope, heroism, and the quiet miracles that happen every day.